People ask me all the time, is AI a threat to human civilization? And I want to start with a simple, honest answer. Not the dramatic one, not the movie version, the real one. AI is not a monster coming to wipe us out tomorrow, but it is a mirror. And mirrors can be uncomfortable when you actually look into them. If you've ever had that moment where a tool you built starts to change how you behave, you already understand the core of this conversation. Think about smartphones. Nobody forced them into our lives. We welcomed them. And then one day we looked up and realized we were checking them without thinking. AI is that kind of moment, just bigger, faster, and harder to ignore. So let's slow this down and talk like adults who've seen a few technology waves come and go. Because panic doesn't help, and blind optimism doesn't either. The first thing to understand is this. AI is not one thing. It's not a single system, not a single mind, and not a single intention. It's a collection of tools built by humans, trained on human-created data, deployed inside human systems. That sounds obvious, but people forget it the moment the outputs start sounding confident. And confidence is dangerous when we stop asking where it comes from. I've worked around automation and decision systems long enough to know that the biggest risks rarely come from malice. They come from convenience, from shortcuts, from the slow erosion of human judgment because something else feels easier. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you double-checked a GPS route, even when it didn't quite make sense? Most of us don't anymore. We trust it because it's usually right. AI works the same way, except instead of directions, it's starting to touch hiring, medical advice, legal analysis, education, and even how people understand reality. That's where the real threat begins to take shape. Not because AI wants control, but because humans are very good at handing it over. One of the biggest myths floating around is that AI will suddenly wake up and decide humans are the problem. That makes for good stories, but it distracts us from the quieter, more realistic dangers. AI doesn't need intentions to cause harm. It only needs authority without accountability. Think about how decisions get made at scale. A human manager can oversee maybe a few dozen people effectively. A system can oversee millions. If that system is biased, flawed, or optimized for the wrong goal, the impact multiplies fast. And the scary part is, it can all look perfectly reasonable on the surface. I've seen systems that were technically correct and practically disastrous. Here's a grounded example. Imagine an AI used to screen job applicants. It's trained on past hiring data. The company thinks they're removing human bias, but the past data reflects decades of biased decisions. The system learns patterns that look neutral, but quietly exclude entire groups. Nobody intended harm, but harm happens anyway, wrapped in clean charts and confident predictions. Now scale that idea up. Credit approvals, insurance rates, predictive policing, content moderation. Each system is small on its own. Together, they start shaping how society functions. So is that a threat to civilization? It depends on whether we stay awake. Another concern people raise is job loss. And yes, jobs will change. Some will disappear. That's not new. What is new is the speed. Previous industrial shifts took generations. This one is happening inside a decade. That creates real pressure, not just on economies, but on identity. Work is not just income, it's dignity, structure, and purpose for a lot of people. When AI systems write, design, analyze, and decide faster than humans, many people will feel pushed aside. If society doesn't adapt thoughtfully, resentment grows. And history shows us that widespread resentment is far more dangerous than any algorithm. The risk here isn't AI replacing humans, it's humans feeling replaced. There's also the issue of dependency. Tools shape behavior. If you rely on AI to write every message, plan every task, and answer every question, something subtle happens. Your ability to think through uncertainty weakens. Not because you're incapable, but because you're out of practice. I don't say that as a moral judgment. I say it as an observation. Muscles weaken when unused. So do cognitive ones. Now imagine a generation growing up with AI as the default answer source. Not a reference, but an authority. What happens when the system is wrong? or manipulated, or optimized for engagement instead of truth? We already know the answer because we've lived through social media. AI doesn't need to lie to mislead. It only needs to speak confidently while being slightly off. Over time, that shapes beliefs, and beliefs shape actions. This brings us to power. Who controls these systems? Who sets the incentives? Who decides what they optimize for? These are not technical questions, they're human ones, and they're where civilization-level risk actually lives. If AI development is driven purely by competition, speed, and profit, safety becomes an afterthought, not because anyone is evil, but because slowing down feels like losing. And when everyone feels that pressure at once, restraint disappears. I've seen this pattern in other industries. Nobody wants to be the first to pause. Everybody wants to be the first to ship. That's why governance matters. Not heavy-handed control, but clear responsibility. If an AI system causes harm, someone should be accountable. Right now, that line is often blurry, and blurry lines are where problems hide. Another thing worth talking about is how AI affects truth, not in an abstract way, but in daily life. We are entering a world where audio, video, and text can be generated convincingly at scale. The cost of creating believable falsehoods is dropping fast. When people can no longer trust what they see or hear, skepticism rises. But too much skepticism leads to paralysis. People stop believing anything at all, and societies don't function well when shared reality erodes. This doesn't mean AI will destroy truth. It means humans will have to work harder to preserve it. Verification, media literacy, and institutional trust suddenly matter a lot more. Now, with all that said, I want to be clear. AI also brings real benefits: medical research, accessibility tools, safer infrastructure, better resource management. Ignoring those would be dishonest. The same systems that can cause harm can also reduce suffering when used carefully. So the question isn't, is AI good or bad? That's a lazy question. The real question is, are we mature enough to use powerful tools without lying to ourselves about their limits? Civilizations don't usually collapse because of one invention. They weaken when they stop paying attention, when convenience replaces responsibility, when speed outruns wisdom. AI is testing us on exactly those points. If we treat it like magic, we'll get burned. If we treat it like a tool with humility and boundaries, it can serve us well. The difference comes down to culture, incentives, and leadership. And here's the part that often gets overlooked. AI reflects the values of the people who build and deploy it. If those values are shallow, extractive, or careless, the systems will be too. If they're thoughtful, inclusive, and grounded, the outcomes improve. Technology doesn't save civilizations, people do. So when someone asks me if AI is a threat to human civilization, I usually turn it back on them, not as a dodge, but as an invitation. What kind of civilization are we trying to protect? One that avoids all risk, or one that learns how to handle it? Because AI isn't arriving in the future, it's already here, quietly shaping decisions every day. The threat isn't sudden destruction, it's gradual abdication. And that's something we still have time to prevent if we're willing to stay engaged, ask hard questions, and resist the urge to hand over our judgment just because something sounds smart. That's where things really get interesting, because once you accept that AI is neither savior nor villain, you start seeing the deeper challenge it exposes about us. It's not about whether AI will rise against humanity, it's about whether we'll rise to meet the responsibilities that come with creating something this powerful. Because every system, every algorithm, every dataset we release into the world is a reflection of our judgment, or our lack of it. Let's dig into what that really means in everyday life. Take healthcare, for instance. AI can help diagnose diseases faster than a human doctor in some cases. That's incredible. But what happens if the system is trained on incomplete data, or if the people overseeing it don't understand its limitations? A patient could receive the wrong treatment, or a doctor could rely too heavily on a suggestion without questioning it. The system itself isn't malevolent. The problem comes from trust without verification, and trust without verification is the subtle thread where small mistakes can scale into big consequences. Now consider education.
AI tutors, essay graders, personalized learning platforms, they can all make learning more accessible and tailored. But imagine if students start depending entirely on AI to think for them, rather than guiding them. Critical thinking, creativity, problem solving, these are not automatically learned when an AI is doing the heavy lifting. We end up with a generation skilled at consuming answers, but less skilled at questioning or exploring. That's not science fiction, it's a plausible scenario in our lifetime. We also need to talk about societal dynamics. AI can concentrate power if it's controlled by a few organizations or nations. When the ability to analyze data, predict behaviors, and influence decisions is limited to a small group, inequalities get amplified. Wealth, access, and influence start to cluster even more tightly, which can create tensions that are very real, very human, and historically dangerous.